has turned into a beautiful sunny day here in Barra, and I have just been cleared by the hospital to sail. They're very happy with how my foot's looking, and I've got a big pack of dressings to replenish those that I've used, and I am now looking at how I get offshore from here and ideally round St Kilda. As the master of Lady of Avenel said, you've got a great week for it, which I think is true, and I think it's an encouragement to actually look at the plans and get my butt in gear. Good morning. We are clearing out of Barra. Not so much to go round St Kilda this time. We're actually just going to go round Barra Head, although hopefully we're going to get an anchorage down there for the night, which will be a rare treat. And then tomorrow, or maybe this evening, we'll head up to Barra Sound, through Barra Sound, and to Arcasade Moor in Eriskay, that of the famous horses, where we will hang out while a little front comes past, and after that front, on its tail end, hopefully there is a window to get out round St Kilda. We are approaching an anchorage on Mingalay, and as hoped, the swell is being blocked by the island and the wind is low enough, so I think we're going to get away with this. This is a temporary anchorage, so I'm going to have to be quite alert, but I am only going to be here for a few hours until tomorrow morning, when I will be heading off. So I don't know what the bottom quality is, but it looks like sand, so we will investigate and see. If it all goes wrong, we might have a long night passage ahead of us, but that's the way of things. You don't know unless you try, right? Hello from Mingalay. It's not the greatest of anchorages, but as the pilot says, it's an occasional anchorage, and today is probably one such occasion. But at the moment, it's gorgeous. I am about 200 metres offshore from a largish seal colony that is moaning, not at me, it was moaning when I arrived, and it has not stopped moaning since. This is just selkies talking to each other. This is a reminder of why I do this cruising thing. It's such a privilege to be the only yacht here, and not quite the only human on the island. There are some sea kayakers who have set up camp a good distance away from the seal colony to respect that, as I'm respecting them by not being a little bit further inshore. It's such a privilege being here. Such a amazing thing to have Trilleen float me into this little bay. Good morning from the Mingalay anchorage, where I have had a surprisingly decent night. There is quite a lot of swell, ground swell from the Atlantic working its way in, but the anchorage has actually proven to be surprisingly good. Most of the seals have gone out hunting this morning, and I soon too will be going out hunting, so to speak, on passage to Barra Sound, round the tip of Barra Head. It's about 40 miles, but in these conditions we can cut some of that distance off by staying close inshore. We are clear of the anchorage at Mingalay and currently just rounding Barra Head in a flat calm, so very, very different to the conditions which I came past this last time. Unfortunately, we're motoring because light and variable wind is the order of the day today, but there we go, that is sometimes what happens. And I'm keeping a careful watch because this is Lobster Pot City. I support the fishing industry, but I'd rather not have a wire around my prop today. This is an exceptional day in the Atlantic. It's flat calm, wind waves are not present, and the ground swell is extremely gentle at under a metre. To my great pleasure, the day started improving again as we turned north, and it became a day I will treasure in my heart for many years because it's so far from the norm. As we drew further north, the wind began ever so gently to fill in, and I made sail, rejoicing as I did so. To be under sail, creeping up the outside of the Hebrides, almost within touching distance of the white sand beaches on a sunny day, is a rare gift, as later film will show. Because of the sand bottom here, the water is green, almost Caribbean in its nature. The temperatures, however, not so much so. Well, that's an altogether better experience. Trilleen is under sail, creeping towards Barra Sound. And now my brain is no longer being shaken by the engine. I can see the wind turbine, which marks the entrance. Obviously it's not a formal mark, but it is extremely handy. Conditions are extremely light. I'd be surprised if it lasts, but it might do. And we've got, I don't know, 6 knots, 7 knots, and the boat's creeping along at 3.5, which is very acceptable. The vane's just steering her nicely, just on a broad reach, heading in towards the sound, and it's an altogether better experience. Sailing boats are strangely meant for sailing. I'm 1 mile from the turn into the Sound of Barra, and I'm about to have to start doing some proper pilotage, although this is perhaps the best day that one could ever want for transiting through here. And so I'm going to be concentrating a lot, and I don't think I'll be taking much film because there are a lot of short legs and narrow margins, and those do not make for happy filming territory. During the manoeuvring through the Sound, just after I'd filmed this, I was joined by a biggish pod of dolphins, bottlenose dolphins I think, who insisted in playing around the boat. The best advice when motoring a sailboat is always to take the throttle back to idle and let the cetaceans decide what they want to do, but I literally couldn't in this situation because of the tidal set and the proximity of the rocks. The dolphins, I have to say, didn't seem offended and sheered off when they realised that I was heading back out into deeper water, away from the bank on which they were feeding and enjoying their lunch. Once clear of the Sound, I hung a left, turning north for a short mile, to reach the cleft in the rocks which is Arcasade Moor, a sheltered anchorage on the east of the island of Eriskay, where Bonnie Prince Charlie landed in 1745 to restore the Stuart crown. So began the Jacobite rebellion, which after military successes was smashed at Culloden, a few miles from where Trilleen spent so much of last year in Inverness. Dropping the anchor in deep mud, I settled down to wait out the next inevitable gale.
And today I am hoping to get this boat out on the way to St Kilda. I can hear that the wind is still howling a bit in the rigging, which is a sign that we are at about 20 knots, which is pretty much what the forecast was for. So what's going to happen is I'm just waiting for the front to pass through at about lunchtime, and then I'm going to jump onto it and head out through the Sound of Barra and into the Atlantic, and hope that the rather confused winds of the last 2-3 days have not set up too much of a hideous sea, and that we can get out to the islands. That is the plan, pretty much. I am nervous. It's a long passage out into open water with no prospect of shelter. Your only real option is to come back the way you'd gone, and that's not a very welcome option. It is just possible that we might be able to hold an anchorage at Village Bay for a few hours and get some snooze, and that would be ideal because then we've got another long passage ahead of us. Well, longish passage, long day sail, 75 miles or so, back into Loch Rogue.
Trilleen is now west of the Sound of Barra and broad reaching out into the Atlantic. Conditions are as given, which means that we've got winds between 18 and 20 knots. Seas at the moment are 1 to 2 metres and they will increase to 2 to 3 metres further out. At present the motion is incredibly comfortable. The boat's doing really well. She's rolling a bit more than one would like, but that's life downwind. So we're downwind under staysail and 3 reefs in the main with a preventer rigged. And at some point, probably around dusk, we're going to have to jibe unless the wind curls. At the moment we're doing about 5 miles an hour. It's possible we could get an extra knot, maybe a knot and a bit out of the boat if we went for 3 reefs, 2 reefs. But actually, comfort is a big thing out here because we've got 62 miles of this ahead of us. So, yeah, big thing to be comfortable. This is going to go on for a long, long time. Well, relatively speaking, a long time. It's not like we're going across the Atlantic, but that would be a long time. So the Outer Hebrides are fading away behind me, and ahead of us there is nothing, just far trackless wastes of the Atlantic. This could be an entirely different day. However, it's the same day. It's the wonders of what happens after the passage of a front. So we came out of Barra Sound in murk and at 20 plus knots behind us, and now it's sunny and the wind is dropped to 15, which is about 10 apparent. Incredibly pleasant, nice long period swell, 7-8 seconds, and Trilleen is steering herself as one would expect. We've got no reefs left in the main and we're under full jib. I've taken the staysail down because it seemed to just be putting dirty air into the back of the main. So hopefully this will be the pattern for the rest of the day and most of the night. We're a bit off course, but that's okay. The question is when we fix it, really. I think we fix it a lot closer to the islands. St Kilda has just come into view like a full rigged sailing ship on the horizon. Towering stacks. It's 28-29 miles away yet, but it's clearly visible in the setting sun. I've just spent the last hour and a bit negotiating 2 cruise ships, both of which have been behaving very well actually, but they're on a converging course. So the one that's closest to me, MS Spitsbergen, which is doing a very reasonable 5 knots, I have to say, not going anywhere very quickly, is had limited room to move. Good morning from Sailing Trilleen. Apologies for the slightly demonic lighting, but it's 02:30 and we are sliding our way past the south end of Herta in the St Kilda archipelago. The sea is glassy smooth, smoothed in part by slight rain that is falling. The sky is occluded but not entirely occluded, and the sea state is slight. We have a swell perhaps of 1 to 2 meters at a period of 10 seconds, so it's extremely comfortable out here and the boat is doing her thing. I haven't touched the tiller since I left Barra Sound. The only thing I've done is adjust the hydrovane maybe 6 or 8 times across the 65-ish miles that we have done so far. Shortly I'm about to have to do some work because I want to take this boat round the western side of the islands, and given that it's OT30 and it is still dark, although it's lightning, even as I speak it's lightning, we'll be standing off a decent way. My word, this is a deeply spooky place. Not sinister, but spooky. The idea that people managed to survive here until 1930, eating birds' eggs, scraping a living, is quite remarkable. The islands are uninhabited now, except for transient workers from Kinetic and the MOD, and from Scottish National Heritage and the National Trust. I'm not quite sure how all that works, but Kilda Range is a important facility for throwing missiles long distances down the Atlantic, and it's not very busy anymore. There was a period where it was very busy, but automation and other things means that there are now many fewer people who have the fun job of calling this their duty station. We're just limping along now, a bit less than 4 knots, creeping down the side of the islands. Trilleen is anchored in Village Bay, St Kilda. The pilot guide for this area understates quite how sketch this place is. You know that you're in a bad place when the specialist freighter that is delivering things to and from the MOD base here is fully powered up and spinning its radars with a bridge watch while at anchor. It's a sign, one might say, as to the sort of place this is. Yeah, it is a very spooky place. The ghost of so much humanity and so much struggle. And such a wild place. This is why sailing works for me, because there were parts of getting here that were a bit grim, but this is amazing, really amazing. Unfortunately, I won't be going ashore this time. There's still quite a lot of swell running in the anchorage, and I've just watched some very experienced, obviously very experienced tour guides land parties on the jetty, and yeah, we won't be doing that. So yeah, and I won't be landing on the beach either because it's rock, and so there we go. Yeah, wild. Good morning. You join me here at St Kilda after a fairly quiet night. It's, as the pilot says, always a rolly anchorage, but it's not been too bad. It's been very welcome, and I'm just starting to get the boat ready to proceed to East Loch Rogue it's raining outside, so I suspect that there won't be a huge amount of film taken of us leaving this stunning anchorage, because there is not much to see. And East Loch Rogue is about 85 miles downrange to the northeast by the standard path that I will be taking. So the wind will be coming west and then switching to the north and increasing in strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass west of the Flannan Isles, which are a pair of, well, three actually, rocky islets sticking up out of the ocean between here and East Loch Rogue, and there's nothing there apart from a lighthouse. They're even more rocky and barren than St Kilda is, and there's no shelter there of any sort, so that will not be a stop on my list. In fact, if I see them, I will consider that we are too close. Yes, so I'm sorry we didn't get ashore here at St Kilda, but the priority was the boat and the priority was my rest. So those are the decisions that you have to make as a solo sailor, and perhaps especially a decision you have to make as a solo sailor with a disability. In order to keep the boat functioning and me functioning, have to really prioritise that. Theoretically I could have stayed here today and gone ashore, but that would have meant a pretty bumpy passage out tomorrow, and I think I would prefer a less bumpy passage. So we'll try for a less bumpy passage, and we'll probably get our hands bitten off anyway, but that's also the way of sailing up here on the western fringes of the United Kingdom.
So I was promised light and variable winds today. Today the winds have not been light or variable. We're on passage from St Kilda to East Loch Rogue, and we have about 15 to 20 miles to run into the loch. Been frankly a bit of a grim day with perpetual rain. It's raining even now a little bit, but it's tolerable. So I motored out of St Kilda expecting to be under motor most of the day, and fortunately I have not. So about 11 o'clock we picked up this beautiful southwesterly southerly wind, and actually it's not been southwesterly, it's been southeasterly, southeasterly southerly wind, and been riding it on this glorious broad reach all the way across the bank between the Flannan Isles and Whale Rock, and just straight down the rum line. So now I've actually managed to see a forecast. It's all good news. We'll carry it all the way in, so that'll be just fantastic, and I look forward to getting into Loch Carlaway, I think, and dropping the hook in what I hear is good black mud.
The mud in Loch Carlaway was indeed good and black and treated me extremely well. While in the loch, I was able to investigate some of the problems which I've been having with my engine. Mostly it seemed to be an issue of water flow, and on the way out of St Kilda there had also been a problem with contamination in the fuel tank. So I was able to clean the filter, and I checked the function of the thermostat, and I was pleased to find that everything was working as it should be. However, these were signs of problems which I would later come to discover were extremely serious. On this, you may hear more in later videos, and in fact, this is the reason why this video has been so delayed. I look forward to telling you all about it soon.